Welcome back, everyone. I am your host, Lena Inez, and welcome to the Frame of Mind podcast, a podcast designed for individuals with ambitious dreams, wanting to become better versions of themselves, feed their mind with wisdom and knowledge, and all talk, self-improvement, mental health, and mindset growth. In this podcast, my goal is to deliver a message that will motivate you, help you, and one day make you successful. So let's dive into this week's podcast episode. Hi everyone, it's been around 2 weeks that I have been here on the podcast, and truly I've been missing it, and I know y'all have been missing it. I've gotten many DMs asking me when will I record or when will I post a new podcast, and here y'all are gonna receive. Now let's do like a little check-in before we dive into this episode. And let's just say this past 2 months I've been taking a rest since I've been putting so much work on me that I kind of just burnt myself out, and I knew I had to take a time off, and I did. I didn't think it was going to take 2 months. Every single time I would go on social media and be like, hey, I'm taking a break. Oh, maybe next week, maybe that next month. And then a next month happened. So everybody's like being led on by accident, but it's because God really wanted me to be put in that place, and he did. Anyways, I also want to say that this is my second time recording this podcast episode. Prior to the first time, it was on. Since this microphone, if y'all watching, it has like a green light, and that's basically when it means that it's connected, but there's another switch to it, which means that you have to turn it on, and I had it off the whole entire time, and I lost so much footage. I lost so much good motivational words. Now I'm trying to make this version way better than prior to the first one. So hopefully I get everything structured and well settled for this episode. Anyways, guys, enough of all of that talk. Let's dive into why I really wanted to come on here and tell y'all this message. I was thinking about this topic when I was viewing my old photos, my old videos, and everything. I just saw myself thinking about what I would think at that time. And I remember at that time I would think about negative things. I was like the biggest self-critic out there. Then I would say such words that influenced the way I thought, that influenced my behaviors, that influenced a lot of things in my life. And because of that, I look at it now and it gets me sad, because I'm like, I should have never said those things to begin with, because I manifested that right now. And it made me feel so sad that I let the insecurity identify who I was. I let myself believe it. I let myself to agree with those terms to the point that it was actually something that I lived by. And then I just realized there's a lot of individuals out there that talk bad about themselves, how they're not worthy enough, or how they can't achieve something, or how they lost potential, and all of these negative self-talk that I just tell them like, hey, be wiser with your words. But it's because I came from that spot. I developed myself to become better at that practice of being, loving towards myself and not being so critical upon my actions and words and behaviors and everything that I did. I know that this message is for someone that's doubting, someone that's allowing self-sabotage define their life, or just using it in general. So what is self-sabotage? So self-sabotage is when you do something that's against your best interest despite having the capacity to do otherwise. And signs of self-sabotage include being harsh on yourself, being pessimistic, waiting until the last minute or procrastination, being disorganized, having imposter syndrome, overdoing it, and feeling burned out. All of the factors that I have named are signs of self-sabotage. These are signs that you're probably self-sabotaging your life. Sometimes we overdo it and we pressure ourselves to do so much of what we can't do. And then sometimes we procrastinate knowing that if I do it, then there's going to be an outcome, or, I shouldn't do it because, other people will do it. But that's where you have to play catch up. And then there's a lot of things. Being disorganized just makes you have more stress and just projects a unhealthy mind And then being pessimistic shows that you don't have a brighter outlook in life. All of these signs contribute to the self-sabotage that you have developed in your life. And now, this is one thing that I talked about the other episode that I wish I just remembered clearly in my head. But we all have agreements and terms that we believe and settle on. And what we believe is true to ourselves. Now, if you believe all of these things in your life, it's because you agree to the term and you have been already associated with that and have already identified yourself with it. That's where you have to break that agreement and just resist it. Because you don't want to deal with these signs of having self-sabotage. It's the agreement, it's the reinforcement of bad negative thoughts that conflict your mind all the time. Why do we self-sabotage? So why do we do it? The reasons why we do is because we have the fear of success, we have the fear of failure, we lack self-worth, we familiarize things with things in the past or something that other people have told us before, inconsistent conflicted thoughts, social or peer pressure, need to be in control, and perfectionism. There's a lot of people out there that deal with all of these things, or maybe just one of them, on why we actually sabotage. But I remember hearing the saying where the mountain is you. You're the mountain. You're what's in between the conflict and the solution. You're the solution. You're basically your own self. But because of the inconsistent, conflicted thoughts, you're blocking what's supposed to move in your life. And sometimes we don't notice that pattern because of how our subconscious mind already regulates that emotion, that reaction already, because of the inconsistent, conflicted thoughts. And sometimes you have to allow yourself to kill that thought. And why am I saying this? Is because sometimes we're so attached to that thought, we're so attached to that bad idea that it's so hard to let that go. But sometimes it's okay to cut it. And I have felt that where I'm like, I realize that I shouldn't be saying words like that, or I shouldn't be treating myself like that, but I still go ahead and do it because of how attached I am. And it's going to be hard to cut the root of it. So basically what I'm saying right now is that whatever comes through your head manifests its way into existence. So if you're ugly, you're going to manifest that ugliness into your life. If you feel you're fat, you're going to manifest that into your life. Because I'm telling you, that happened to me. I was so harsh on myself. I would literally talk bad about myself when God has given me this body to take care of it, to love it, to everything. I am the temple of Christ. But then me talking about myself that badly is literally talking bad about what God created me to be. It's me judging the creation and the image that God has put. Why are we gonna judge the image that we were meant to have? You were supposed to influence life with existence of words. And because of the manifestation of concurrent words with saying that you're ugly, that you're fat, that you can't do it, that you're not worth it, that you don't deserve love, all of these negative thoughts flow into your head and then they manifest their way through existence. When those thoughts that tell you those things are not really healthy enough for you to proceed, you need to catch on to that pattern, because you're not gonna let that manifest its way and then you're gonna regret it when it does. The words that you form are basically literally a projection of who you are. Communication projects a lot of who you are, basically. I would hate that every word that you speak into existence was a projection of your insecurity. Because the truth is, nobody cares about your insecurities. The only one who's going to suffer with having these insecurities, backslashing them all the time, is you. And I remember Emmy Moore saying this: I don't know why Gen Z is such in a rush. Well, let me tell you this. I don't know why Gen Z is so insecure. I don't know why we're so insecure about the image that God made us to be. I was insecure and I'm still am. I'm practicing how to love myself and everything. But when I know that I have faith in everything, I know that my insecurity shouldn't be the reason why I'm stuck in the same place. Your insecurity needs to be stopped, because when you allow it to flow in your life, you're going to be stuck in where you were never supposed to be at. That insecurity is a distraction. That insecurity is supposed to stop your progress. Sometimes we focus on our insecurities to where our energies goes to the insecurity. You gotta cut the focus off the insecurity and start having your focus on the finish line, on the goal, because the goal won't be completed unless you focus and you give the energy to that goal. But because you're so focused on the insecurities, on the little things, tell me where you're at right now. Are you here? Are you in the goal? I don't think so. Here are the consequences of insecurities, of self-sabotage. And it's missed opportunities, low self-esteem, strained relationships, stress and anxiety, financial consequences, physical health issues, damaged reputation, difficulty achieving goals, and professional growth. Those are the consequences of insecurities and self-sabotage. Are you willing to let that insecurity lead you to these consequences? I don't think nobody's willing to let the insecurity take them down on the path that they're not supposed to go. I don't think nobody is. But subconsciously and unawarely, we do this. This leads me to the other point, which is recognizing subconscious patterns and understanding your subconscious mind. Now, I've talked about this before in my podcast, but if you're new here, the subconscious mind is basically your shadow self, something that is very deep rooted into your human existence, and it's something that we have to reveal to the light. And how can we do this? Well, therapy works with this method. Also, shadow work, which is, you can journal, get a very deep prompt, and, you talk, and, you kind of reflect on it and everything. And this will help you figure out yourself a little bit more. I did this prior to my healing era, and it works so much. And, I still do that. I practice this all the time, being able to build a good connection within myself. And sometimes we lack that self-love, that self-worth, because we don't have a real connection with us. So you got to build that relationship with yourself first. And with doing these exercises, they'll help you, build the foundation of loving yourself. And of course, healing the wounded parts, in which are the reasons why you can't love yourself, which this whole point talks about that. Yes, you can probably have trauma that shapes who you are now, but you can't let that diminish what you're thinking. Let's say thinking about future or thinking about change. These thoughts are always gonna kill the future. This is where you become pessimistic, because you have no faith. And the whole point is you have to have faith. Yes, this situation happened that formed you now, and you feel like there's no good outlook in life. But just because that happened doesn't mean you're gonna have zero faith in what you have wanted or want. And I remember talking about this prior to the other podcast episode that I've recorded, that we make ourselves the biggest enemy before we actually confront the real enemy. The mountain is us. The real enemy has not even confronted us yet, but because we have made ourselves the biggest enemy, we allow ourselves to be stopped by us. Are you serious? You're allowing yourself to be stopped? And that's something that mentally strong people don't even do. Maybe this whole podcast episode is about mentally intelligent. It's about emotional intelligence, mental intelligence. Okay, anyways. I don't know why you're allowing yourself to be that mark in your life. And I would really hate it for you to recognize your achievements by the errors you've caused. What I mean by this is that the reason why you couldn't get where you wanted to be is because you stopped yourself before you could even make it. And are you going to be proud of that? That you made yourself the biggest enemy before you confronted the real enemy? Recognizing the subconscious patterns and analyzing or having a relationship with yourself is so crucial to the part of overcoming the self-sabotage and the insecurity. So, how do we overcome it? How do we heal from this? Well, I have some options for you. Number one, we talked about this prior to the point, which was recognizing your patterns. This includes identifying triggers and noticing negative self-talk. It's always great to know and be self-aware than not knowing at all. Number two is finding the root causes, which we kind of touched last topic, but of course you got to find the root, and that's where most of us miss. We cut the top of the plant, but we never cut the root in which we are embedded in, and we need to cut the roots of it to get rid of the whole idea, the whole agreement that we believe that's true. Understanding the root causes includes the fear of failure, perfectionism. Find the root of these factors, and you're going to start seeing that maybe the problem wasn't really you, but the problem was that you never really found the root to it. Sometimes we got to do dumb stuff to learn, and you got to realize that the things that you've done is to learn, not to criticize yourself over with. Because you don't want to be the only one to put evidence against yourself. That was a good idea. You got to forgive yourself. And yes, it sounds weird, or it sounds kind of like, what do you mean I have to forgive myself? Well, you do need to forgive yourself. And the reason why being that is because forgiveness shows an act of maturity. It shows an act of love. It shows an act of responsibility and accountability. So when you forget to forgive yourself, you're constantly bashing the evidence against yourself. You're constantly bashing these thoughts against yourself, but you gotta allow yourself to be forgiven. Because sometimes we have this idea that we need to forgive others, that we need to forgive that person, or oh my gosh, like I really want to be forgiven by this person. But maybe you gotta look in the mirror and tell yourself, can you please forgive me? Because it's sad knowing, man, I don't even want to cry. I remember I manifested so much of the idea that I was fat and ugly. And I will look at myself and be like, Sherlyn, at the end of the day, you were never fat and ugly. Like, I'm so sorry that I would say these things to you. And I just thought about it, and it just made me cry all the time, because I never really deserved those words, but I would always say them. Like, not even my closest friends would say it. Like, they were mature enough not to say it in front of me, but because the way I approached it, I saw it play in my life, actually. And then I remember just, looking at myself and being like, but why would I say these things? And then I look at my old pictures as well. I'm like, why would I say these things? Like, that just shows how immature I was. Insecurity is also a projection of immaturity. We need to allow ourselves to enter a stage of progress, not a stage of stillness. Because you're not going to get it. You're not going to get anything. Forgive yourself. Don't allow yourself to bash evidence against yourself all the time. That's self-sabotage, not forgiving yourself because you feel like you don't deserve that apology, but you do. I feel like some of us don't even understand ourselves that much, but prior to the point about understanding your subconscious mind, when you build that relationship within yourself, you start building such value over yourself. And with that, I build such value in which I want to project a good person, and I still struggle with insecurities, don't get me wrong, but I have definitely improved from prior to my other stage in life where I was constantly being manipulated by these thoughts, and it contributed to the way I lived. It contributed the way I would form my habits, and it definitely took a toll in my life. So you gotta watch out on how that insecurity identifies in your life, because it will have access to your brain, and then cutting the root is the difficult part. So it's better to stop it now before it gets even deeper. Shifting your mindset. Now, I've talked about this in another podcast episode, which I deleted if you're one of those stalkers, but I deleted that episode. I did not like it, but I deleted it. But this is such a good concept on shifting our mind, because sometimes we try to jump into new ideas, but we never really shift into the ideas. With this in mind, you gotta limit some beliefs, to visualize success, and you gotta practice self-compassion. That was the biggest one I had to learn, which was self-compassion. I was definitely not compassionate about myself, but understanding what God did in my life, I just understood to treasure my life and be more compassionate on the body that God gave me. Set realistic and incremental goals. Now, this one includes breaking down your goals and focusing on the present moment. Sometimes we hop into the next idea that we're going to change in the future, or if this doesn't happen now, it's going to happen in the future. Sometimes you have to set your eyes on the present moment. And I mean this because you won't see it now, but you'll see it later. But it's better to focus on now instead of being so anxious about what's next. This also leads with another reason of self-sabotage causing anxiety, and being one of the reasons why most of our generation is dealing with constant burnout. It's because we're always stabbing ourselves on what can I do in the future, when truly the future has its own worries. Just worry about the day of today. If we're so focused on what's supposed to be in the future, then we're constantly gonna be deprived in presence. And it's true, like when you're always looking in the future, you're gonna lack love, you're gonna lack empathy because of your focus. And as I don't know if I mentioned this already, but where your focus goes, your energy goes. You gotta make sure that your focus is now and not the future. Number 5 is cultivate new habits. This includes replacing negative behaviors and developing accountability. Number 6 is reflecting and adjusting, which the hardest part is adjusting to the new ideas, to the new forms of what you have been creating. Is definitely one of the hardest things, but is definitely one of the most rewarding things ever. Adjusting to change, adjusting to differences. It is so important, especially now that I am adjusting to, entering a new season where it's like not the same for seniors, but not the same for juniors. It's so confusing. But adjusting to it was kind of difficult, but now I got the gist of it. Now I'm just like rolling. But then guess what? More seasons in life are going to occur like that, which that's my next podcast episode, understanding life seasons and events, because I feel like someone out there needs it. I feel like all the messages, someone needs it out there. And then number 7 is get support. Now, if I know some of these things are actually like trauma responses, or they're actually part of a mental illness, which I do encourage you, if you have any of these signs, that if you feel like they're playing such a crucial part in your performance, then I do encourage you to find help, which is either in therapy or talking to somebody, or whatever it is that you find help. And I remember when I was at this point in life, I would tell my friends how I would feel about myself, and yes, they will be like, no girl, you're pretty and everything. But then when you had the friend that was like, no girl, like you're not this, you're not that, and they will give you like a sermon, like they would preach to you about like confidence and everything. That's literally what you need to find. You don't need to find someone that will comfort you. You need to find someone that will give you a reality check. And also acknowledging like the mental illnesses and everything. I do encourage you to get therapy, or finding professional help, because even with watching videos like this, it's not very ethical enough. It's not ethical enough for you to just get these ideas, get this information and just engrave it in your head. It's not ethical. It's not very professional as well. And that leads me to the last point, which is confidence. To tie everything up, you need to perform your performance with confidence and not self-doubt. When you don't have confidence, you're performing an ability of insecurity and an ability of unfaithfulness. So, are you going to be willing to show up with confidence and show up for something that you've been working hard for? Or are you going to let yourself get down by the enemy that you formed by the insecurity? Anyways, guys, if you want to know more in depth about this whole topic, I recommend that you subscribe to my newsletter linked in the bio below. If not found there, then go to my Instagram, which is right here, or my socials. And then you're going to click the link in the bio and you should automatically have a pop-up which gives you the email or name that you have to type in, and you're automatically signed up for the newsletters. Now, the newsletters will include weekly topics, weekly assignments, or whatever it is that I am going to produce that week. Now, this week, I am going to be talking about self-sabotage and insecurities, but if you want it more in-depth, I definitely recommend you subscribing to the newsletter. Guys, I forgot to mention as well that you can officially support the podcast. Well, you can go listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast, and not just that, on Spotify you can go on the description and you can click listener support and you can donate up to $10 a month. Now, it gives you an option for $1 a month, $5 a month, or $10 a month. Now, if you just want to do a give go, well, there's another link in the description down below, or even on my Instagram. You can donate a minimum of $20 just because it's not a recurring transaction, but it's just a simple one go. You can do any type of donation. You can put any amount. But I'm just saying this, if you really want to support my podcast, the money will go 100% to the podcast. It will go into having new equipment. It will proceed to also including guests, which I am so excited. I'm literally working upon that to, get guests over the podcast and everything. So I'm definitely working towards that. And how can you help? Well, by donating. I think that's the end of this podcast episode. I'm so excited. It has been 2 months that I have not seen y'all, but now I'm here and I'm so excited to continue with more of these episodes. Anyways, guys, I love y'all. Bye.